Great. Excellent. So, greetings from Tokyo. This is live, so this is Daisuke, and this is just a quick impromptu live stream. It's not going to be very long, but it'll probably be something that will be up and running on the channel as soon as it's over. So this is one of those things where I don't announce any of this, so I apologize to you in advance for not announcing any of this. It's not my intention to do that, except it's just I found myself, I had a couple moments to spare, and so I just thought I'd take the opportunity to say hello. So greetings, and I just wanted to I was going to actually say a few things, and just wanted to touch base with you and see how you were doing. So that is just the reason why I'm here. So it's once again just an opportunity just to say hello to you, my dear friends, and hopefully you are doing well. So I want to let you know that a couple things. So I'd like to say that I've been very fortunate in that I have been receiving a lot of comments on videos on this channel lately from a good number of people that are commenting here for the first time, and that could either mean that maybe some people have been watching videos here for some time but are only very recently choosing to leave comments, or maybe that means people who are coming to this channel for the first time and leaving comments as they see fit. So whatever the case may be, I would like to say thank you very much, very much. I'm very grateful to you, the viewers, people who have commented a lot in the past before, and also people who are commenting for the first time on videos. I always, for those of you who are new to this channel, I just wanted to say that it's something that I really take very seriously. That is the comments that you leave behind. I usually have weekends kind of I usually leave weekends off, so to speak, because I like to spend the time with my family. But maybe on weekdays I always try to get back to all the comments that are left behind by viewers like yourself. And so, because I really take them very seriously, and I consider them a great honor, because I feel like you take the time to leave a comment, whatever the occasion might be. You take the time to leave a comment, and so I think the very least I could do is just acknowledge it to the best of my ability. Now, I must say up front, of course, that I don't pretend to be any kind of great expert in every little facet of cinema. I don't know everything about everything. And in fact, I don't know, my knowledge is actually very small and very limited. So I can't claim to be able to answer every single question that is posed here. But I can just, at the very least, try my best to acknowledge the comments to the best of my ability. So that's my way of saying to those of you who are interested in leaving comments behind you, I always do my best to respond. And I also find that comments are, from my point of view anyway, a really great opportunity for me to get to know you, because YouTube is this sort of thing where the only way for me to be able to communicate with you is through the comment section. So, I read all the comments, and if even the ones that are critical of the videos, and I don't shy away from those as well. I really value critical comments as well as praiseworthy comments, and so I don't feel like please don't feel like every comment that you leave has to be praiseworthy or something like that. And on the contrary, I'm all I'm asking is if you leave a comment, it can be an honest reaction to something. It can be something that you feel passionately about. And again, I can't promise to be able to answer every single question that has ever been posed, of course, because that's just impossible, and I'm not a film critic like that. But I think the very least that I can do is try my best to acknowledge the fact that I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate the efforts and energy that you put in to this channel, because I really believe that it's a collaborative effort. It's not just me making this YouTube video and putting it up and then seeing what happens. It's a YouTube video is a YouTube video because it allows for people to watch it as well as for people to make them. So I'm very much appreciative of that, and I always want to convey to you out there that I really believe this YouTube channel is a collaborative thing. I will listen to ideas if you have them. I will always listen to suggestions if you have them. I don't claim to know every single thing, so I cannot. I admit that I always need new ideas, fresh ideas all the time. Sometimes it's not easy for me to address everything, and I know sometimes people ask, oh, maybe you should try to do this type of movie, or should focus on this title or this title. And while I always listen to those, I always have to say that there is a limit to my own personal schedule, and so unfortunately I can't I don't necessarily do on-demand reviews, so to speak, but I do listen to comments and suggestions, and if it's a nice fit with generally what I'm thinking, then I will certainly take it into consideration. So this is all to say that I'm very much open to comments and suggestions, and I think the most important thing for me is to be able to, what do I say? I always say it's a great opportunity for me to catch up with old friends and to hopefully make some new ones. So I really believe that. I think it's, sometimes, I'm not I don't like to think of myself perhaps as being a kind of well, how should I put it? I do know the internet, and I have a sense of how the internet works, and so I don't have any delusions as to any sort of potential pitfalls, as it were, in terms of comment sections and things like that. So I'm completely appreciative of the types of how should I put it? Making YouTube videos is also not only an opportunity, but also it's potentially, one leaves oneself open for receiving sometimes not so nice comments, but that's comes with the territory, I suppose. And so I don't usually mind those. And so if it means if how should I put it? If it means risking having to receive a couple bad comments, but also being able to potentially meet some new friends, then it's completely worth it for me. So that's how I view it. So in that sense, my friends, if you have any thoughts or comments about anything, or if you just want to just talk or something like that, I'm very happy to do my best to accommodate. So this is just once again my way of extending to all of you a warm welcome, and I hope that you are doing very well. And as always, I hope you're watching a lot of great movies. So that's just my my video. In fact, I was going to make a video like that, just trying to welcome people who might be new to this channel, because I think some people have made some comments recently, and I haven't seen these people before, so it's like the first time, I think, for some people leaving comments. And so I just wanted to extend to all of you out there just my warmest regards and best wishes and warmest welcome. So, and if for those of you for whom this is the first time, hello, my name is Daisuke, and it is my pleasure to be able to make your acquaintance. So I hope you're well. So anyway, that is just my take there. So let me now talk to the chat here. So Mike, hello. Our dear friend Mike is here from Las Vegas. Hello. My goodness. And Jay is here again from Southwest. Bows. I bow in return, my friend. JR62, hello. Denise, I hope I get that pronunciation correct. Hi from Germany, Daisuke. First time interacting here. Well, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. It's nice to meet you. I hope you're doing well. I've enjoyed your videos immensely, though. I actually just ordered the second run release of Emperor's Naked Army Marches On due to your videos. That, Dennis, thank you very much. You have made my day. You know, that reminds me, right? So the second, the Region B Blu-ray, or not Region B, it's all regions, right? It's region free. The new Blu-ray of Emperor's Naked Army Marches On, the Kazuo Hara documentary. So I made a video, maybe a couple months back, maybe a little bit more. It's quite a long one. I think I divided it up into 2 videos, I think. And it was about the Japanese documentary called The Emperor's Naked Army Marches On. And I still think that that film packs a punch. Now, as far as I understand it, in Japan here, it has a kind of troubled history in terms of its theatrical release, but it is still available, widely available on a DVD, I think, and you can get the DVD here. So you can, it's not like the film was banned here in Japan. On the contrary, it's fairly easy to access, but it's never been released on Blu-ray. So I think this is the first time in the world that the film Emperor's Naked Army Marches On by Kazuo Hara is going to be released on Blu-ray, and so that's very exciting. I actually, I haven't pre-ordered it, but I should actually order it right now. So thank you very much for reminding me. I'm going to order that and yes, get it. So yes, I knew I was forgetting something, but actually you reminded me, so I'm going to order that right now. So thank you very much for reminding me of that. That's great, Dennis. So thank you. I hope that, I don't know if it's your first time watching it or not, but if so, I hope that it's a rewarding experience from you. And if you have any reactions to the film, as always, please let me know in a comment in a video somewhere. I'd love to hear what you think of the film. So thank you very much, my friend. Thank you. And it's nice to meet you. I hope you're well in Germany. CineArts, our dear friend, hello. I hope you're doing well. And Heirloom Providence, hello. Renee, hello. I hope you're well. Stefanos, greetings from Greece. Hello. Oh, Greece. This is the first time that maybe... Well, maybe, gosh, if it is, hello. If not, then it's nice to see you again. Greek films. So, I am thinking about, I do these series of discussions on films of the filmography of a particular director. At the moment, I'm trying to go through the works of John Carpenter. I think in the past, what did I do? I did some videos on Dario Argento, I think, and also I'm going through the works of Kazuo Hara very, very slowly. I admit I'm quite embarrassed to say that, but very, very slowly I'm going through the works of Kazuo Hara. I think I did also the works of Edward Yang as well. That was very that was a quite a I enjoyed that very much, actually. And actually, the next, I'm thinking, it's now November, and once I'm finished with the Carpenter work, which hopefully will be soon, again, I can't make any promises because I don't have a set schedule. It really depends on my time and my work schedule. But if things work out, and maybe after John Carpenter, I was thinking, what should I do next? And so maybe. Oh gosh, I don't want to make any promises, but I was thinking about going through the works of uh, um, Theo Angelopoulos. So, but I can't make any promises. But it would be really great. At the very least, I would love to be able to discuss the traveling players, for example. But I'll need some time for that because, as you know, the works are actually quite involving, and I think this is a very good thing, but they take a lot of energy, and it's quite a it, it's like one needs time to digest what it is one is watching. It's incredible. So one of these days, perhaps I'd like to do maybe a series, hopefully on that. But again, I haven't decided yet. But that's one of my dream projects. But one of these days, perhaps. But anyway, I hope you're doing well, my friend, in Greece. So Romero Flores, hello. And let's see, Nazarene Prod, hello, hello. How are you? And Thomas in California. It's so cold today. Winter is just around the corner. I bought the Wes Anderson movie Bottle Rocket this weekend. So I am assuming that version that's the Criterion Bottle Rocket. So, that's another director I haven't spoken about, Wes Anderson, as much. I'm an admirer of Wes Anderson, but I think I'm at the point where I need to. I've seen his films a number of times, but I can't say that I'm really how should I put it? I don't have, in my view anyway, a strong enough grip on some of his works to be able to talk about them comfortably. Let me put it that way, because I think there is actually a lot going on in his films that I haven't yet fully been able to process in my mind yet. Maybe I'm still in the process of doing that, but I'm in the process of processing. But one of these days, yes. And Bottle Rocket is one that I enjoy very, very much. So I don't know if it's your first time watching it, but if it is, I hope you enjoy it. And please let me know what you think of the film. Thomas, I hope you're well. Carl's Rants and Reviews is here. Hi. It's nice to see you. It's nice to see you as always. Thomas continues, my favorite Criterion Collection movie of all time is Short Cuts by Robert Altman. It's a totally awesome movie, a collage of short stories interconnected by the California fruit fly crisis. Yes, yes, and the sort of ominous opening shots of the helicopters, right? And the spray, right? And what is it? Is it the Tim Robbins character who's walking out there in the outside saying, "Oh, it's not poisonous, it's not poisonous," or that sort of thing. I'm with you in terms of my sharing your admiration for the film Short Cuts and its appearance in the Criterion Collection. I think it's one of my favorite releases in the Criterion Collection. Actually, I enjoy that film immensely, and it's a long film, but the way it's paced is such that it feels very very fresh, and it never lags. It goes from point to point to point to point, And that's one of the fun things about that film. There's an interconnection there. Sometimes the internet connectivity might seem a little bit forced in order to serve the narrative, but I don't think that's a negative thing. I think that's part of the fun of watching a Robert Altman film like this. I mean, he's made a myriad type of films in his career, of course, but one of the types that he made is this sort of collage work, composed of many different stories of many different characters that seem to be connected in this kind of interweb of connectivity. Nashville comes to mind, of course, but Shortcuts is, I think, the supreme example. A really knockout film. I'm a huge fan of Annie Ross, and the songs that she sings for the soundtrack of Shortcuts, those set of songs is really quite remarkable. I have the CD. I remember I bought that CD soundtrack many years ago, and I still have it somewhere. I have it in like a little CD storage box somewhere, but I still have it. And I was actually listening to it the other day. I really love that soundtrack. And Annie Ross is just, her voice is everlasting and golden. So that's a great one. Yeah, Shortcuts is great. Anyway, yeah, I agree. Yes, Ulysses Gaze, please, says Renee. Yes, that would be, again, it would be, that's my dream project. So let's see what happens with that. Maybe it's now November. I don't know about starting it this year, but I mean, 2020 is around the corner, so it might be something to do. And I do have those not those videos, those DVDs on the artificial eye sets. You know, there were those 3 sets, from the UK, and so that's what I would probably rely on, going through, maybe going through each one of those titles one at a time in those 3 sets. So that might be one to go with. So, and let's see. Mike says the Carpenter film reviews have been great. Really appreciate the time you've put into them. Well, thank you very much. I must admit, I did The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, and that actually, the reason why I'm taking a little, it's been a while since I've put up my last Carpenter video, which was The Thing, and the next one is supposed to be Christine. I was actually going to do that this weekend, but I admit I was a little bit spent of energy, and I'm still actually trying to recover a little bit, and that's because the Thing videos actually took a lot out of me. It took a lot more than I had anticipated, and so there's something about that film that is a kind of, I don't know what it is, but it's one of those things where one cannot stop thinking about the possibilities of that film and what certain things mean regarding certain characters. And I don't want to say too much about the film The Thing if you haven't seen it, but for those of you who've seen The Thing, I think you know what I'm trying to get at here, which is the possibilities are endless. And so there was a point where I was finding myself, I was trying to sleep one night and I couldn't sleep because I was thinking about the different possibilities and permutations of, well, what if this were the case, and what if this were the case? Because as you know, if one little variable occurs, then the whole structure has a potential of changing. Because if for instance, if this are true about a particular character at this point in time, then what does that mean for the rest of the characters and in different points of time and that sort of thing? So I was actually thinking about it, and I couldn't stop thinking about it, and so I was thinged out, so to speak, and I'm just trying to build up my energy level to be able to address the film Christine. I have my notes all set and ready for Christine, so I know kind of what I'm going to say, and I know what I'll try to say, but it's just a matter of doing it. And so I always say I'll do it soon, I'll do it soon, but it's just, you know how things can happen as well with one's schedule and stuff. Things can happen. You come home and maybe it's been a long day at work or something like that, and so it's a little bit, maybe I don't have as much energy. I'm not as young as I used to be, and all that stuff. So I'm just I'm doing the best I can, but I admit that the thing videos were they really I felt very yeah, I felt thinged out after that, and that's a good thing. I don't at all hesitate from my position that I really believe that that's one of the greatest American films of the latter half of the 20th century. So, but thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that, and I'm just continuing that. Oh, by the way, I I was just I was just finishing watching or rewatching the film Vampires. You know, John Carpenter's Vampires, and I have the Indicator Blu-ray of Vampires, and actually that's what I was going to rely on when I was going to make the video for Vampires, whenever that will be, hopefully very soon, but I can't make any promises, but fingers crossed it'll be very soon. But I just actually was able to recently get the what is it, the Shout Factory collector's edition release. So at last I was able to get that. So I was just in time. So I'll be able to just go through that film again, but just looking at it through that, what is it, Shout Factory, Scream Factory release. And so that'll be very interesting. I just got it in the mail a few days ago, in fact. So, you know, things arrive here in Japan with a little bit more time. But hopefully that'll be great. You know, the thing about the Shout Factory, Scream Factory releases of the Carpenter films is that, as you know, there's a planned release of Big Trouble in Little China from them, I think in early December, if I'm not mistaken. So I've already pre-ordered it. So once it's released, hopefully that will expedite whatever amount of time is required for it to be shipped here to Tokyo. But I'm trying to still struggle in my head as to should I wait for that release to come so then I can talk about the Big Trouble in Little China film in the context of that new release, or should I make the video now and then make another video about Big Trouble in Little China as soon after those new releases come in. I still haven't made up my mind about that. As it stands now, the next schedule, the next bunch of films to be discussed are, of course, Christine, and then Starman, and then, right, Big Trouble in Little China. Is that right? So if that's the case, it's not that long, but I could stretch it out a little bit and maybe wait until whatever it would be, the beginning of December, middle of December, to wait until Big Trouble in Little China arrived here, and then I could talk about it in the context of that new release. So, but we'll see. That is a very that is a film that is so near and dear to my heart, and so I mean, if you asked me now, what is my favorite John Carpenter film of all time, I struggle. Some days I wake up and it's The Thing. Other days I wake up and it's Big Trouble in Little China. So who knows? Who knows what it'll be on whatever day of the week. But I really love that film. So, Mike, thank you very much for that nice comment. CNITV, hello. I was wanting to know your thoughts on the Alejandro Jodorowsky filmography, if you don't mind. No, I don't mind at all. I really like his films. You know, I had the great fortune of being able. I was living in New York at the time that the films El Topo and The Holy Mountain were being re-released. I don't know if you remember, but they are on these DVDs, and I think now Blu-rays as well. But they were released on these DVDs in the black box and so. But just prior to that, around that time, they had enjoyed, I think, a limited re-release in certain theaters. And there was a release of them in New York, and actually the filmmaker Jodorowsky was there. He was present, and so he was there, and he was very gracious with his time, and he was answering questions from the audience. And I remember I was invited by a dear friend of mine in New York at the time and he was a great fan of El Topo on the Holy Mountain, in particular El Topo. And so, it was a great opportunity for me to be able to see El Topo on the big screen. Just a kind of mind bender of a film. If you haven't seen it, it's really a one of a kind spectacle. Quite engaging, very violent, but I think the violence is such that it has a point. There's a function and a meaning behind the violence. It's not violence for violence sake. So it was really quite an affecting show for me, and to see the filmmaker present there as well, it was great. And he was so lovely, and he was talking about Alan Klein and his history and relationship with Alan Klein in the context of these films and others, of course. So, yes, I'm a great admirer of his works. So, Jesse says hello. Good to see you, sir. Good to see you, my friend. I hope you're well. Nick Libertas says, today's my birthday. Well, happy birthday, my friend. I hope you have a good birthday. I hope you're well. And I was gifted the Qatsi trilogy. Wow, very excited. Well, that is very timely, of course. I was just speaking about the Qatsi trilogy just a couple days ago, I think. And so I'm very glad to hear it. I hope you enjoy it. My goodness, that is something else, to be able to enjoy one's birthday, or to celebrate one's birthday with the Qatsi trilogy. Wow. Well, that I am impressed. I am impressed. And JR62 says, "How is your Out One project going? I have seen plenty on I have seen plenty on eBay." Oops, I just jumped. Hold on. Should I pick one up? I don't know what the price is. I don't. I would hold off on that. Someone has to correct me here, but Out One, is that out of print? I don't think that's out of print, is it? It's got to be available through some label somehow. You don't have to get the limited release version of it, or something like that, but I'm sure it's got to be still available, is it? If so, I wouldn't. It's not like one needs to pay like a lot of money for it, but if you're going to get Out One, then there are two versions of Out One. There's the kind of the long version that was originally planned for television, Noli Me Tangere, and then there is the so-called shorter version, relatively speaking, Spectre. So if you can get a set with both versions, I think that's the ideal situation. But I have this the Arrow Academy Jacques Rivette, the limited edition release that has other films as well. But I'm not sure. Maybe you can still get. I'm not so good with my Out One release history recently. So, but yes. Wolfratz is here. Hello. Seofin, hello. Matthew is here. Good morning. I was lucky to see The Irishman in theaters to get me in Scorsese mood for the next film club. Well done, my friend. That is one film that I'm really excited about, The Irishman. I tried to get tickets to it. There was a showing. There were actually three showings, I think, planned for the closing night of the Tokyo International Film Festival. And actually, the showings, I think, are scheduled for tomorrow, Tuesday, the 5th of November. And I was trying so hard to be able to get tickets, but I was unable to. So unfortunately, I couldn't get see the film, or get tickets to see the film in the theater. And as far as I understand it, the film The Irishman is not going to get any kind of theatrical release here in Tokyo. So but it will be available for me to watch on Netflix. Now I don't have a Netflix subscription. I don't have anything like that. I don't pay for any Netflix subscription at the moment. But I think I will open a subscription for Netflix for the purpose of me being able to watch The Irishman. So I'm looking forward to that very, very much. Very much, in fact. I'm really I'm very excited for that film. I know there's a lot about the de-aging, and of course I haven't seen it yet, but might have mentioned it before, but I was always of the opinion that the de-aging thing in The Irishman, and again, this is based on of my own comments and not necessarily having seen the film yet, so I really should try to temper my comments as much as possible. But like, there isn't anything revolutionary necessarily about the use of makeup on actors' performances that is obviously makeup. I think the example that comes to mind immediately for me is the film Once Upon a Time in America by Sergio Leone, which also stars Robert De Niro and also features Joe Pesci as well. But the film features many of the characters or many of the actors in heavy makeup to simulate different age from their actual age at the time of the filming of the film. And so while it's great performances from everyone who is undergoing this old age makeup, so to speak, it's still obviously makeup. So it's not like that is in any way a kind of realistic makeup portrayal. But that's not the point of that film. It's all through the mannerisms and the way the performances are made, etc. And so I always felt that perhaps the de-aging thing in this film has a similar, if not the same kind of philosophical approach, namely that it is not the point for it to look as real as possible, but just like old age makeup in Once Upon a Time in America, it even if it feels like an appliance, it's still a matter of the acting and the performance and the gestures and the way the actors carry themselves on screen. And so, it's like it feels like that to me. Now, I do also appreciate the fact that there is something to be said about actors being made up to look older than their real age versus actors being de-aged in order to look like themselves, only much younger than what their actual age. So I understand that there is a different kind of gap that's going on, and so perhaps there's a different psychological effect being generated in the minds of the viewer, perhaps, and that's what's going on here. But at the same time, I think the approach is similar. So, but I'm looking forward to that film very much, and in fact, I'm very much encouraged by the critical reaction that is going on with that film. So I'm so glad. I was so glad you were able to see it, Matthew, and yes, I hope you're well. Oh yes, and Taxi Driver, yes, so Taxi Driver will be the next subject of discussion in the film club later this month in November, so it will be my pleasure to talk about that film. Yeah, well, I'll save my comments on Taxi Driver, of course, for later this month, of course, but it's great. So anyway, let's see. Just going to do this for a few more minutes. I'm going to get out of here soon because I just want to maybe, let's see. Okay. But Touch of Film is here. Hello, I hope you're well. Lars says, I own a few Criterion titles. Shortcuts with the book on DVD is one of the... Well, that's right, the book. Yes, it has the book. So I actually have that somewhere here as well. So that's a good one to have. Touch of Film says, I'm hoping to pick up Green Tea Over Rice and finally upgrade my DVD. So this is the... What is that? The Ozu film, right? So Flavor of Green Tea Over Rice. So that was a recent... Blu-ray release from the Criterion Collection. A really great one, by the way. Really, really great. Akia, good morning. Good morning. I hope you're well. And let's see. GR62 says, been seeing a lot of Criterions on eBay going for very little cost, mostly DVDs. I'm going to beef up my collection this month. Great. Lizardman, hello. Your recent Bresson video was marvelous. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Just getting into Bresson myself, and this was such a treat to watch. Thank you, sir. Well, thank you. I hope you enjoy your Bresson journey. And if you find any films in particular by Bresson that that affect you, or that you have a strong reaction to, please let me know. You can leave a comment behind somewhere, and I'd love to hear your reactions. As I said in that video, I think I'm very much taken by the Bresson films, and I think Criterion has a pretty, not pretty, a very respectable selection of Bresson films. So I hope you're doing well. So let's see. So very good. So okay. CNITB says, I watched the film The Beatles Yellow Submarine last night, and I was wondering if you have any opinions on that film. I guess I have to say, don't press that button. Let's see. And I think that if ever I feel down or somewhat bereft of energy, sometimes I try to pick myself up by listening to Hey Bulldog. So that never fails to pick me up. So All Things Film, hello. Yes, I hope you're doing well, my friend. Yes, yes, Big Trouble in Little China. Yes, what a film indeed. Great. Let's see, Daeg Films. I would wait until it comes out. I think you're referring to my question about Big Trouble in Little China. I think so. Yes. Let's see, Punk Nerd. Hello. How do you watch US DVDs? So I have a region-free or zone-free player, so I'm able to watch DVDs on my zone-free player, US DVDs on my zone-free player. I also have a US player, an older US DVD player that I have hooked up to the TV in the main room, and that's mainly because my children sometimes watch US DVDs, maybe cartoons or something that we sometimes buy when we are traveling overseas, and so we have that hooked up to the main TV, and so they can watch their own movies that are US DVDs. So there's that as well. So Nick K says, speaking of Jodorowsky, what are your thoughts on animal cruelty in films? Does it affect your opinion on a film in a negative way? Yes, that's a really good point. And I would say very briefly that it does affect me. And I think it's really a kind of a case-by-case thing. I don't usually say a kind of a blanket statement in any way, one way or another. But I do say that if it does occur, then it does maybe jolt me in a certain way, usually negatively, but it really depends also on the context of what it is and what it's depicting, and that sort of thing. So that's why I resist making a kind of blanket statement, but I always try to address that on a kind of case-by-case basis. So, and let's see. Lucky Boy Hello says, hey, cool Chanel channel. Okay, thank you. And Dragon Mountain Fanboy, hello. Just wanted to say hello. Just discovered your channel today through the Suspiria 2018 video. I love how it's said. Well, that's very kind of you. Yes, that was last year. No. It was earlier this year, because Suspiria 2018 was actually released in Japan here in January 2019. So that was what 10 months ago or so. And so I remember seeing that. I really admire that film, Luca Guadagnino's Suspiria. I really admire that film very much. I've seen it. I have the Blu-ray, and I've seen it recently just to see if my feelings of it remained intact, and they did, in fact. And it's one of those things where if I begin to compare the film in my mind to Dario Argento's film, then it falls apart. It falls apart. But if I resist the comparison with Argento's film, which I think Argento's film is a masterwork of cinema, but if I resist the temptation to compare them in my mind, then I think it operates magnificently. The Guadagnino version operates magnificently. And so Uh, I'm very, well. Thank you very much, Dragon Mountain Fenway. That really makes me very happy. Thank you, thank you. And what is it? Oh gosh, let's see. I'm skipped around here. CNITB says, I was also wondering about your thoughts about on the films of Mikhail Haneke. So stay tuned. I might have a video coming up. I don't know when, but it might come up very soon. Hopefully very soon. But I'll save my comments for that video. Let's see. Okay. Iacona23 says, now I feel bad about bashing the Katsu trilogy in a comment a few days ago. I'm going to revisit those films to see how my opinion might have changed over time. I always liked Philip Glass music. You know, that's interesting. You know, the Philip Glass music of the Katsu trilogy is one of its strengths, actually. And there was a moment, a period in my life when I was just listening to that soundtrack, the Koyaanisqatsi soundtrack in particular. I was just listening to it on repeat. Really a wonderful soundtrack. I love that. I really love Philip Glass music. I had the pleasure of being able to see him once live in concert in New York when I was, I think, in high school. My mother very graciously took me to one of his concerts. It was really wonderful. He was there, and he was playing many of his sort of famous pieces. And I remember he was playing, or they were performing the piece. It wasn't the entire opera Einstein on the Beach, but it was the spaceship portion of Einstein on the Beach. It's quite enthralling. It has a really hyper tempo to that piece, if you know Einstein on the Beach and all, if you know Spaceship. And there's a point where towards the end of that particular segment, and it really crescendos, and it really reaches a fever pitch, and it goes da 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 da, and it stops. And it's supposed to continue on at the end. And it goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? And it continues on for a final 20 seconds or so. But there's a moment at the very end, or towards the tail end, where it and there's silence. And I remember this completely. You're not supposed to clap because it wasn't over yet. But I remember someone in the audience began to clap, thinking that it was the end of the performance. It wasn't the end. But yeah, that Philip Glass music and the Katsu films is really just fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So. And let's see. Dungeon Studio is here. Hello, yes. Nazem Protz is talking about the fog of war. Yes. And yes. Here we go. Just going around here. Sorry about this. Skipping around comments here. I'm sorry, but oh, Tim says, thanks for doing an update video on my birthday. Well, happy birthday, Tim. So happy birthday to Tim. I hope you have a great birthday. Well done. Well done. So, okay. So, yes, animal cruelty. Yes, there's the animal cruelty in Pink Flamingos. Yes, that's a somewhat unpleasant scene to watch, although it's interesting to hear John Waters' take on that in terms of that particular scene. So if you're interested in hearing a nice counterpoint to that particular moment in Pink Flamingos, I would encourage you to try to check out John Waters' comments on that. So and let's see, so okay. Okay, so I'm just going to start to wind down. It's 11 p.m. here in Tokyo, so I really should start to. Oh, Hot Pepper's here. Hello, and the Cinematheque is here. Hello, and let's see. So sorry, I'm skipping around here. So if I haven't answered your question, I apologize. And Knuckles 96 is here. Hello. So if I haven't answered your question, then I really apologize. It's not my intention to, but I'm just trying to. See here again. You know, I'm just doing my very best here, but unfortunately sometimes it's not good enough, I'm afraid. So, and so, okay, so if you don't mind, it's now 11 o'clock at night, so maybe I'm going to start to get ready to go to bed. Actually, I do have to do a couple things before I go to bed. I'm just trying my best. A number of people have been asking me about what is it, Godzilla, the Godzilla films, and so because Criterion has released their Godzilla Showa era films set. Now I ordered it, but it hasn't arrived here in Tokyo, so I'm just waiting for it to arrive. But in the meantime, I've just been trying to sift through my own thoughts and experiences with the Godzilla films, the Showa era films, and just trying to figure out, just trying to prepare what my potential comments might be. I don't anticipate my opinions of the films to change in any way with the coming of the set by Criterion. I'm still looking forward to the set, don't get me wrong, but what I mean is I already have a kind of set feeling or opinion about how I feel about each of the films in the Showa era, so to speak. Although in fact the Showa era actually extends, technically speaking, it actually extends into the 80s, but for purposes of Godzilla, people refer to the Showa era films as the films from 1954 to 1975, so that set of films, and then they don't count Godzilla 1984, or if you're in the US, 1985, they don't count that. They count that as part of the Heisei series, but actually that's still within the Showa era. But so I'm just trying to figure out my ranking of the Showa era films, the 15 films in the Godzilla Showa era from 1954 to 1975. And so I've just been writing my notes here, and I think I have my ranking pretty much set up. So one of these days when that set comes in, I'll be able to share this with you. But I would say for the most part, it's probably, there are some, the order here, for the most part, I don't think it's that much of a surprise, but maybe my choice for the top 5 might be a little bit surprising. I haven't, for instance, my choice for numbers, my choice for the top 3, well, let's say, my choice for number 1 isn't one that I've seen on many other lists as people's number 1's favorites. So, but I'm a great admirer of the Godzilla films, and I do have. I'm very much looking forward to receiving the set. Of course, don't get me wrong. I'm very excited for this, and what it means for the Criterion set, what it means for these sorts of films. I'm not in any way. I don't want. I'm not deluding myself. I know that these films are not for everyone, and they shouldn't have to be. I mean, you don't have to like all the films. If you don't like the films, you don't have to buy the set or anything like that. It's no one's hopefully no one's forcing you to buy the set, buy something you don't want to buy. So I think there's a lot of freedom of choice in what one wants to purchase and what one doesn't want to purchase. So, but I always find that I think that the Godzilla films in particular, the so-called like kaiju films or tokusatsu films, tokusatsu eiga, it's called special effects films. They have this sort of hokey, cheesy quality to them, and I fully appreciate them. And it's not like they are necessarily heralded among Japanese critics here. On the contrary, these films aren't held up in necessarily in the highest critical regards here in Japan either. They're not mentioned a lot in the. I don't think they're mentioned at all. In fact, in any of the top 10 lists from Kinema Junpo, for example. I think the only film that ever made it within like the top 40 or something range of any Kinema Junpo list for any year was King Kong versus Godzilla, which was. The Japanese release annual was 1962, and so I appreciate the fact that these aren't necessarily considered to be the greatest films ever made, of course, but they have I have a strong fondness for them that is unshakable. Some films I love very much, and that's because I've kind of, I mean, I'm not the biggest expert in Godzilla films, but I feel like they've been part of my life. They've always been around, so to speak. And I think I might have mentioned this before, but I know the Godzilla films primarily through the Japanese versions, the Japanese cuts, and so I know also the English language versions of most of the films. I mean, in fact, I remember one of the first Godzilla films I ever saw in the theater was the film Godzilla. It was the American version, Godzilla 1985. This was the American cut, the English language cut of the Godzilla 1984 film, and now it had new scenes with Raymond Burr and Dr. Pepper, and so I remember seeing that in the theater, and it was kind of an amazing experience actually, and it was 1985, so I would have been around 5 or 6 years old actually, and so that was a kind of a I still remember that. And I still remember the closing monologue given by Raymond Burr's character, whose name is Steve Martin, and it's an amazing monologue to close the film. Actually, I'm not a big fan of that. I like the Japanese cut much more than I do the American cut. But one thing that's great about the American cut of Godzilla in 1985 is, in fact, the closing Steve Martin monologue at the end there. Which doesn't exist in the Japanese cut. So there's that. But what was I saying? So yeah, so Godzilla 1985 was actually, I think, my first theatrical experience with Godzilla. So, and then from there, I always knew Godzilla, on VHS tapes of the Japanese cuts, and because I'd always watched them, and there were some films that I really, really loved, and there were some films that I kind of thought were a bit odd, but I grew to love them very much. And there are some kaiju that I really admire. There's some that I kind of grew to love. For instance, I admit I'm much more of a Mechagodzilla guy than I am a Ghidorah guy, King Ghidorah guy. But I've grown to respect King Ghidorah for what he represents. I like the I like Mothra, but I admit that I'm actually I've grown to really respect and admire Rodan. The Japanese name of the creature, of course, is Radon, but in English it's called Rodan. And there's that. I'm also a great admirer of the other kaiju allies of Godzilla, in particular King Caesar and Jet Jaguar. And Jet Jaguar, I think, that's one of the great things, to have Jet Jaguar finally be part of the Criterion Collection. It's really amazing. I still can't believe it. I feel like I have to pinch myself. But I do appreciate the fact that the Godzilla films aren't for everyone. They aren't everyone's cup of tea, and but I always try to explain it like it's kind of like. In Japan, there's a sport called sumo wrestling. And to the distant observer, sumo wrestling might look very stupid and very odd. You have these, seemingly overweight men just, wrestling with each other. And what's the fun in that? But in fact, and I'm not at all an expert in sumo, the sport of sumo, but in fact it is quite a difficult sport, and it involves a certain amount of skill and dexterity in terms of being able to use the weight of the opponent to throw them down, judo skills, and also strength in the legs, and of course upper body strength. And it's not just this sort of stereotypical view of like fat men fighting each other. It's actually, there's a lot of skill involved, and a lot of training, and a lot of strategy in that sort of sport. And it has a great great following here in Japan. People who are into sumo are really into sumo, and so it's sort of, how should I put it? Rather than look at sumo and say, "Oh, that's stupid" or something like that, and just outwardly say something that a lot of people are really into. It's probably better. I always try to suggest to people, if you're not going to say something nice about it, it's not worth it to say it. Just you can just walk away and just find something else that's to your interest, because there is a great following with respect to sumo. Well, it's the same with Godzilla. I would say, I don't expect Godzilla to be for everyone, but there is a group of fans out there that are really into Godzilla films, and so I think their love of Godzilla films shouldn't take away from, shouldn't be in any way a deterrent to anyone else who's not necessarily a fan of Godzilla. In other words, someone who loves Godzilla shouldn't in any way deter from anyone else who has a love of a different type of cinema. So. To each his or her own, so to speak. It's also like sports in a way. People like professional baseball or maybe professional American football or something like that, and you have teams that have names that are like animal names, and so you have teams that are fighting and they're animal names, and so people who aren't into sports really aren't into sports, right? That's like, why is this interesting? I don't get it. That sort of reaction. But people who are into sports are really into sports, and so much so that they get into the nitty gritty and the player makeup and the strategy and the coach and the sideline and all that stuff that goes into the history and background of famous sports duels and sports games and matches and all that. Well, I think the same kind of metaphor can be applied to Godzilla films. There's a kind of battle, not so much in the first film, of course, but maybe from the second film on, from Godzilla, what is it, the English title, Godzilla Raids Again, 1955. So there, for the first time, we saw an actual kaiju battle between Godzilla and another monster there. And so I think from there, this notion grew of there being kind of battles between one monster and another in the film. Well, it's almost like a sports game where you have fights or you have matches between two teams, and at the end of it's either a win, lose, or draw, or that sort of thing. And some people like those sorts of sports teams, others people don't. So I think the same kind of metaphor can be applied to Godzilla films. And so people who are into them are really into them, and they don't necessarily you don't necessarily have to justify why, but the same with sports. I think people who are really into sports, it's great, but you don't have to justify to me why you like sports, right? You just can go on enjoying what it is you enjoy. So, and I think the same is true for Godzilla films, as well as any kind of other film that might be out there, genre or otherwise. So, cinema is a big enough tent to allow as many viewpoints and passions as possible, and I mean, I'd like to think that. So I'm very much looking forward to receiving the Godzilla set from the Criterion Collection. I do, though, anticipate having some criticisms about the set because of the fact that there are certain supplements that I think are lacking, and certain things that I think it could have done to really create the ultimate Godzilla set. As it happens now, I don't think it's the ultimate set. It might be close, but something close is better than nothing at all. So I'll try to look at it as a glass half full type of thing. But if I were to look at it the glass half empty type of thing, it would be, I think it had the potential for being something really, really great. It could have been an A+ set, and maybe it ended up being a B+. Who knows? But we'll see. When the set comes in, I will certainly examine it and just give you my thoughts on it. And I do have a number of thoughts on it already. So, and I should say also that when I looked at the cover art for some of the things there, I think the cover art for the set is actually quite magnificent. And I think I was remarking the other day about how some of the cover art I thought might have been a little bit, maybe, like I was wondering why certain artistic choices were made. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that the cover art is really quite on target for each of the titles. Perhaps two on target, perhaps. I think, for instance, the cover art for Godzilla versus Megalon, again, I don't have it in front of me, but the Godzilla versus Megalon art is like Godzilla's head in front of a huge yellow sun, and then there's Megalon fighting, I think, in kind of a comic book type of thing. And I think that's really great. I love that cover art because I love Godzilla versus Megalon. But I think actually, I think there's a shot of Godzilla walking in front of a sunset, but the shot is not actually in Godzilla versus Megalon, but in fact the shot is from Godzilla versus Hedorah. There's a very famous shot of Godzilla versus Hedorah, his introduction in that film where he's walking in front of the sunset. And so it's almost like the cover art from Godzilla versus Megalon is it's almost taking a cue from Godzilla versus Hedorah, which is interesting. The same is true for the cover art for Terror of Mechagodzilla. Now, I seem to recall that the Terror of Mechagodzilla cover art has this sort of comic book kind of zap pow kind of thing, like American comic book. What is it? What's the phrase? Onomatopoeia, that sort of thing. Those things that are words that make up sounds in the English language. And it has, I think, Godzilla and Mechagodzilla and Titanosaurus, the three kaiju in that film, stomping a city somewhere. And so I think that's really great. I really love that cover art. It's really magnificent, and it actually depicts a particular scene because there is a scene of kaiju rampage on the city. But I think that cover art is maybe even more appropriate for something like Godzilla versus Gigan, because Godzilla versus Gigan, which is a few years earlier, what was that film? 1972. So I think Godzilla versus Gigan was that film, the Gigan film, is the one that has the comic book motifs in it. At the very start, it has a person who's a comic book artist as being the main character, and in fact, that's one of the ones where you actually see Godzilla and it's Anguirus. They're actually talking, and you see them in their speech bubbles. It's very or infamous, depending on your point of view. It's famous or infamous, but that is actually mimicking comic book art or manga, that sort of thing, so Japanese manga. And so I always thought that Godzilla versus Gigan, of all the films, was the one that probably drew the most references to comic book art. And so I always thought that the onomatopoeia motif would have been would have fit the Godzilla versus Gigan art very, very well, in fact. But it works just as well for Terror of Mechagodzilla, don't get me wrong. I really like that art. Also true for Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla art. That art, I think, is the blue with Mechagodzilla in the middle and King Ghidorah, what am I saying? King Caesar in the back, and it's the shot through Godzilla's legs. And I remember thinking, wow, this is like, it's like, wow, I've never seen a shot like this. When in fact, actually, there was a shot, and I remember this actually, and I actually saw it again, and it was in the film All Monsters Attack. I don't know if you know that film, but it's All Monsters Attack. That's the one with the little boy and Manila, and Manila talks, but it's really imaginary and all that stuff. But it's there's a shot of Manila, because one of the monster in that film, the new monster that's introduced, the kaiju, is called Gabara, who is a sort of tall green monster that serves as almost like a bully to Manila. And there's some scenes between Gabara and Manila, and there's actually one scene in that film where you see a shot of Manila shot through the legs of Gabara. It's much like the way in which Mechagodzilla is depicted in the cover art for the Criterion Collection in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. And so in fact, the shot through the legs viewpoint has occurred in Showa films already. Not in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, but in fact in a few films earlier, from the late 60s, in the film All Monsters Attack, which incidentally is considered perhaps by many to be the worst of the Showa era films. I wouldn't recommend All Monsters Attack to anyone who has never seen a Godzilla film. If you have never seen a Godzilla film, do not watch the film All Monsters Attack. That's probably that's not a good place to start if you're going to watch a Godzilla film. But I do think All Monsters Attack is a really good film. It's It's actually quite an experimental take on the Godzilla legend, very experimental, and I think I admire it very much for the fact that it is so experimental, and it's very playful, and it's like what's that film with Macaulay Culkin? It's like Home Alone. It's like Godzilla and Home Alone mixed in together in this sort of kids fantasy, and it was made for children. I think at this time in the late '60s, or starting in the mid 60s and going into the late 60s. Godzilla films were really children's films. And so it's not surprising at all that you have a film in the late 60s, or to close the 60s. I think it was 1969, right? All Monsters Attack. But it's not surprising at all if you have a film like All Monsters Attack closing out the 60s, being in essence a kid's film from the point of view of a child who is imagining these things that are happening with Godzilla and Manila and Gabara, and also other monsters that occurred that were used in stock footage in that film, of course, as well. But my point, though, is that you shouldn't watch All Monsters Attack if you haven't seen any Godzilla films before. But it is a much better film, and I really like that film. So maybe one day I'll be able to talk about that film. But anyway, my friends, sorry about that. I was I said I was going to go to sleep, but in fact it's now 11:20. So I've been talking for 20 minutes about the Godzilla set that hasn't actually even arrived yet. So anyway, my friends, I hope you're well, and I will. Let's see. Okay, I will see you again very soon. So thank you very much for your time. And hold on, I just want to just go through one other thing. If I skipped your comment, I hope you can forgive me. But again, this is just an impromptu. Mike, hello. Thank you very much for your kind super chat. That's very kind of you. Thank you. You're so kind as always. So yeah, and let's see. Oh, X24 Riders here. It's nice to see you. Blake is here as well. Hello. Sorry. So I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to talk to you too much, but I hope you're well. And anyway, my friends, let me just go now, and I hope you have a great rest of your day wherever you are. Once again, it's my pleasure to be able to talk with you, and hopefully we can talk again very soon. And please keep the conversation alive amongst you. You know, I will leave, but you can still talk amongst yourselves. And yes, I hope you're well. So anyway, be well, take care of yourselves, and I will see you all very soon. So cheers, bye-bye. Thank you very much, my friends. So, all right, so thank you. And yes, Dungeon Studio says All Monsters Attack. Yes, the English dubs. I think there's some charm in the English dubs, but that's another thing I will talk about is my feelings about the English dubs. I mean, um, I have nothing against anyone who watches the Godzilla films through the English dubs or the English language versions. I have nothing against that at all. And anyone who loves the films or knows the films only through the English language versions, I'm perfectly fine with that. But for me personally, I have some issues with the English dubs in general, or the English language films in general. I don't feel comfortable watching them. Um, to be perfectly honest, I sometimes feel like um, uh, I don't know. I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't feel comfortable watching them sometimes, and I know that there isn't any kind of nefarious purpose behind them, and for anyone who made the films, I know that, but it just feels like a kind of a layer added on to the films that it makes the films somewhat mockable. And again, I know that that's not the intent of them, but the end result is the end result. And so I feel sometimes uncomfortable watching those films in their English dubs. I feel that way in general about Japanese films. I don't like to watch Japanese films dubbed in English. That makes me feel somewhat. Um, I have a bit of an odd reaction to me. For instance, Rashomon. I mean, that's a good example. The film Rashomon, if you have the Criterion release, that you can actually watch that film Rashomon in the English dub version, which I think was prepared contemporaneously with its release at the time, in 1950s or so. It's actually it's really terrible. The film Rashomon in the English dub, in my opinion, is a really bad film, and I think that's due in large part to the fact that the English dub is, I think, really very bad. I think it's almost, for me anyway, it's kind of insulting because it has occasionally that kind of how do I explain it? It kind of has that, not all the actors, but some of the actors have um, that chop sake kind of way that people outside of Japan think. Not everyone, but some people outside of Japan have a view of how Asians speak English, or how Japanese people speak English. It's sort of a stereotypical view, and I find that some of the dubbing in Rashomon has that kind of effect. Whether it's on purpose or not, I don't know. But the film Rashomon in English, I think, is a terrible film. And so, but in Japanese, I think it's a remarkable film. So I would say that the effect of the Japanese language versus the English applied dubs with respect to the Godzilla films, I would suggest is not so far from the example I raised with Rashomon. So, but again, that's not to say that I have anything against anyone who admires the Godzilla films through the English language materials. And that's not to say that anyone who does so has a certain view of, like Asians or something like that. I'm not saying that at all, but but that's just my own. My own reaction is, I think, based off of my own experiences, perhaps. But that's just my way of saying that I prefer to watch the Godzilla films in the original Japanese. And so, and I think they have a different effect. They have a potentially different effect in Japanese than they do in English. So, whether that effect is better or worse, it's up to the individual viewer, of course. But I think nonetheless that the effect is distinct when one watches a Godzilla film in Japanese versus one watching it in English. And my my hunch is that people who might react negatively to Godzilla films might be doing so in part based off of the English language versions. Who knows? Maybe that same viewpoint will be intact once the Japanese versions are seen, and people think, "Oh, these are still terrible films in Japanese." Fair enough. Fair enough. I think that's a perfectly reasonable explanation to, or reasonable reaction to have. But I would just, at the very least, make the suggestion that it is possible that one might enjoy the Godzilla films more in the Japanese language, because of there's something about watching a Japanese film in the Japanese language. There's something that is, I think, more direct. Perhaps there's a closeness there that I think an extra barrier of language that is not the original language would sometimes have. Um, so there's that. But anyway, my friends, I'm just completely going overboard. I will maybe try to talk more about this when the Godzilla set arrives, and I do, because I really do believe this, and so. And actually, All Monsters Attack. I think All Monsters Attack in English is actually not a good film at all. It's a pretty bad film. But All Monsters Attack in Japanese is uh, really good. I really think it's very good, and I think the watching it in Japanese versus watching it in English, for me anyway, makes the difference. So, but anyway, I will leave that for another day, and so I will see you all very soon. So anyway, have a great rest of your day, and please be well. Cheers. Anyway, thank you very much. And